You're listening to Bloomsbury Radio.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Letter of the Law. Today we are joined by Hodge Jones and Allen solicitors, just down the road from us in fact, and they are here to speak about the launch of a new free personal injury law clinic that's aimed at serving the local community, also helping our students, providing them with valuable practical advice. From Hodge Jones and Allen solicitors today, we're delighted to welcome personal injury partner Daniel Denton and associate Denise Doherty. Now, Daniel, let's start with yourself. Could you tell us a bit more about your role within Hodge Jones and Allen solicitors, how long you've been with the firm, sort of specialisms and cases that you deal with, please?
Yes, hello everybody. Yes, my name's Daniel Denton. I'm a partner in the personal injury department at Hodge Jones and Allen solicitors. I've been with the company since May 2023 and I've specialised in claimant personal injury work for the last 24 years. The type of cases I do range from road traffic collisions, accidents at work, accidents in a public place, accidents which occur on a highway, and any type of one-off accident where someone has been injured.
Thanks very much, Daniel. And Denise, how about yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Denise Doherty and I'm with Hodge Jones and Allen since February 2018, so 7+ years now. I started as a paralegal back in February 18 and I qualified in 2023 and I'm now working as an associate in the personal injury team. And I work on a number of cases such as employers' liability, public liability, road traffic accidents and fatal claims as well.
Excellent, thank you so much both of you. Daniel, Hodge Jones and Allen solicitors, as I mentioned, just down the road, just by Euston Square Station. Tell us a bit more about the firm, its history, sort of mission statement for our listeners.
Yes, thank you. Hodge Jones and Allen was established in 1978. So they've now been established for 47 years. And the firm's ethos has always been to fight for people's rights. So as a company, Hodge Jones and Allen are passionate about access to justice. And we want to offer that access to justice to any person who has a legal problem, and that's irrespective of their financial circumstances.
Excellent, thank you so much. So we are here today to talk about the launch of a free personal injury law clinic. Daniel, how did this partnership come about?
Yes, so I approached Bloomsbury Institute in March 2025. I did some research about Bloomsbury and I understood they used to do a law clinic, and I spoke to a member of the staff in the legal team and they said they were keen to start the law clinic again to offer that opportunity for the students. So we had various meetings for the last few months and eventually managed to set up this remote personal injury clinic, which has been really popular so far.
Right, so after those initial conversations with Bloomsbury, what happened next?
So we devised a system of how we could actually start taking inquiries. So we devised an inquiry form, and that inquiry form can be found on the Bloomsbury Institute website, which is www.bil.ac.uk. And then if you search for Bloomsbury Law Clinic, there is a button on that particular page which says Inquire Now. We've also talked about setting up receiving inquiries through other ways as well, whether that's by email or by phone. So we've also devised an email address which was bilradio@hja.net and a phone number which is 033 00 294 446. So I spoke to some members of staff at Bloomsbury and we discussed how we were going to promote the clinic. And we had various conversations with the marketing team, and we managed to launch the clinic a few months later in the summer of this year.
Excellent. Now, if you're a member of the public or a student listening to this, you might be wondering sort of what are the aims of this partnership? How is it going to help students? How is it going to help the local community? Could you speak to the collective aims of this partnership when you set it up with Bloomsbury?
Yes, so the various aims of the partnership, the first is to actually help unite the local community with Bloomsbury Institute London and provide a free service for members of the public who have suffered an accident and don't know what to do and are unsure about consulting a firm of solicitors. So we wanted to first of all encourage that closeness in the community. Also, parallel to that, we also wanted to offer lots of opportunities to the students to gain some real life experiences. So the way they could get real life experiences could be such things as improving their soft skills. So those soft skills may be, for instance, empathising with clients. It may be helping to learn how to promote the clinic, so that's good business development skills, as well as learning vital tools such as interviewing and advising, understanding how to draft letters and client care as well. So we thought all that would be very important for students to help their employability skills as well when they eventually enter into the legal profession.
Excellent. Now, you spoke about the inquiry form. And I understand that the personal injury clinic works on a remote basis. Can you speak to the structure of how remote meetings work? So a member of the public completes an inquiry form. What happens then?
So it'll either be an inquiry form or an email or a telephone number. And once the inquiry is received, we then ask the student to set up a 30 minutes free legal advice telephone call. Normally the meeting would take place remotely on either Microsoft Teams or Zoom. And if at the end of that 30 minutes of advice I didn't feel that we got to the bottom of the problem, we would either extend the meeting or we could offer another free 30 minutes free legal advice as well. Once the meeting's completed, I would typically speak to students after the meeting and we'd learn how to I'll teach them how to structure the advice letter that goes out to the client, and we always try and aim to get that advice letter out within 21 days.
And what are the sort of range of cases, the types of cases that would be suitable for this PI clinic?
So what I normally say to Bloomsbury is, please just make sure that the client suffered a one-off injury as a result of an accident. But if there's any uncertainty as to whether or not the case would be suitable for the PI clinic, then Bloomsbury would run that by me anyway. And so what I would say to people is that if they're unsure whether they've got a personal injury case, please just complete the very simple inquiry form, which should only take 30 seconds to a minute to complete, and then we can advise them either way as to whether the case is suitable for the clinic.
You've mentioned some of these personal injury incidents can be due to a one-off event. What are the kind of one-off events that are involved in these cases?
Okay, so it could be somebody who's involved in an accident at their workplace, or it could be that they've suffered injury as a result of being involved in a road traffic collision, or an accident in a public place such as a restaurant or someone else's home, for instance. Or it could be something such as using a product that may be defective, which has caused them to suffer an injury. So anything where there's a one-off accident, so in other words, the injury is not progressive, then that would be suitable for the clinic. But as I said, the best way to find out is simply fill in the inquiry form or email the inquiry to Bloomsbury, and we can check to see whether it is suitable or not anyway.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Denise, let's turn to you now. Denise, from your perspective, what benefits do you think this clinic has to members of the public as well as the students listening in?
Yeah, so in terms of the members of the public, the most important benefit is that it allows people to obtain access to justice irrespective of their financial position. And you're dealing alongside a specialist lawyer with years of experience as well. And also it takes place within an informal and friendly environment, which is also probably appealing to the public. And in respect of the students, Daniel's touched upon this earlier, there are multiple benefits of the clinic. Firstly, it allows the students to become involved in promoting the clinic, which is a key skill which employers are looking for in graduates. The clinic also allows students to develop their soft skills. This includes demonstrating empathy and understanding with the client's needs, interviewing and drafting skills, legal research and client care skills, to name a few.
Thanks very much, Denise. Daniel, turning back to you. So you've spoken to a client. It looks like they have a good case. What would be the next steps?
Yes, so the next steps would involve a discussion with the client as to how the case will be funded. So we would typically ask the clients whether they belong to a trade union, because some cases can be funded through a trade union itself, or alternatively whether they have legal expense insurance. Assuming they have neither of those two options, then we would then run through the client about a no-win, no-fee agreement.
Right, we hear about no-win, no-fee agreements quite a bit. How exactly do these arrangements work?
Yes, so the no-win, no-fee agreements work by Hodge Jones & Allen purchasing what's called an after-the-event insurance premium. And the reason we do that is that if a claim is unsuccessful, then the idea is that the after-the-event insurance premium would cover the other side's legal fees and Hodge Jones & Allen's expenses. So we wouldn't actually make a profit on the case in a situation where the claim is unsuccessful.
Right, so the client then reviews this agreement. They signed the no-win, no-fee agreement. What happens next?
Yes, so if a client wishes Hodge Jones & Allen to represent them, we would send a client care letter and the conditional fee agreement to the client for their approval. We have specialist new client advisors within our department which actually would advise the client if they have any queries in relation to the agreement, because obviously it's really important that the clients are comfortable in signing those agreements before proceeding for us to represent them.
And so as that claims process moves forward and you start the claims process, what are the initial steps that you take as a lawyer at that stage?
So the way the case proceeds would actually depend on the value of the claim. So with the larger value claims, the way we would proceed typically is that the client would have signed some forms of authority to obtain their medical records, and we would apply for those medical records straight away by way of what's called a subject access request. And at the same time, we would send what's called a letter of claim, ideally to the insurance company, and that letter of claim would set out the details of the client's accident, as well as the allegations of why we believe that the other side are to blame for the accident, as well as the injuries the client suffered at the same time as well. And crucially, there'll be an invitation for the insurance company to fund some rehabilitation for the client straight away on a private basis, which is really important, because the quicker the client can get access to rehabilitation, the better recovery that they can make.
Thanks, Daniel. So Denise, I'll turn to you now. So some people who have experienced personal injuries in the past may be concerned about the sort of time periods and limits that there are in terms of making a claim. Perhaps it's happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Can you talk about limitation periods and the sort of time limits involved for different types of personal injury claims?
Yeah, of course. So the main time limit that we need to look at when we're dealing with personal injury claims is the limitation period. What I mean by that is you have 3 years to bring your claim with the court. So that's 3 years from the date of the accident. And an exception for that is if it's a minor that was involved in the accident, then they have 3 years from the date of their 18th birthday. So it's always one to look out for when you think you've got a personal injury claim. That 3-year time limit is very important. And then there's a number of different other time limits to consider as well when dealing with personal injury claims. you get different types of claims at different values. So the lower value claims, you deal with the defendant's insurance company through the claims portal, which has been devised by the Ministry of Justice. And this portal sets out certain time limits for the defendant insurers to respond. So what would happen is we would send, instead of a letter of claim for larger value claims, we would send what's called a claims notification form. And we would send that through the MOJ portal to the defendant's insurers, which must be acknowledged by them. They then have a specific amount of time to respond with their liability decision. This changes depending on case-by-case basis. So, for example, if it was a road traffic accident, then the defendant insurers would have 15 days to respond with the liability decision. If it was an employment liability claim, it would be within the 30 days, and then a public liability claim would be the 40 days. So there's different time frames to consider. So if the defendant insurers deny liability within that time, or they fail to admit full liability, or even if they fail to respond within those certain time frames, then what happens is the claim exits the portal and it must proceed through the traditional litigation process, which is the personal injury pre-action protocol. So those are the different time limits that we would consider when we're making the claims.
And Denise, Daniel spoke a little earlier about the defendant insurance company and they're making a decision on liability. So what happens next once the defendant insurance company has made their liability decision?
Yeah, so regardless of whether it's through the portal or outside of the portal, we have to wait on what the defendant insurer's response is going to be to the claim in terms of liability. So there's two ways really. They'll either admit liability or they'll deny liability, or there might be some alleged contributory negligence as well, which will probably be discussed in more detail down the line. So if it's a liability admitted case, what happens next is we would obtain medical evidence from the client, from a medical expert, So we would already at that stage have the medical records on the file, and then we would instruct an independent expert to examine our client for the purposes of a medical legal report. And then hopefully within that we would be able to review the report and there would be some sort of prognosis provided for the client's injuries. If it was a liability denied case, then the defendant has to send us disclosure documents and reasons for the denial, which we'd have to review and consider our next steps there. So when liability is denied, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So we would have to review the reasons why they're denying, what's in their disclosure, and go from there.
Thanks, Denise. Daniel, so you spoke about the process for low-value cases, but what happens in terms of the process where clients have suffered far more serious injuries?
Yes, so I've mentioned previously about the letter of claim and the invitation to the insurers to try and agree some rehabilitation treatment with the client. If I could just speak a little bit more detail about that. So the way that would work would be that if the insurers were willing to consider rehabilitation, they would normally nominate 3 case managers and will pass on some CVs, and I would have to consider those case managers to see if they had the appropriate experience to discuss with our client about their treatment needs. So once we've agreed a case manager, that particular case manager would then visit the client's house and speak to the client in some detail about their treatment needs. So, for example, the treatment needs may be in respect of obtaining some urgent x-rays or an MRI scan, or maybe they require perhaps some physiotherapy treatment or psychological treatment, for example. And then following that meeting, the case manager will then prepare what's called an immediate needs assessment report. And that report will then be sent to both the claimant lawyer and also the defendant's insurance company, and we would invite the defendant's insurance company to fund the recommended treatment on a private basis. Now you might ask, well, why would the insurance company agree to funding all this treatment? And the answer to that is that the quicker the client has the rehabilitation treatment, the more likelihood they are to make a better or a full recovery. And if a client does make a full recovery, then that would reduce the value of the personal injury claim. So there are incentives from both parties to actually engage in rehabilitation.
Now, listeners might be wondering, why would an insurance company agree to this? What incentive is there for an insurance company to have to agree to this process? What would you say to that?
Yes, so as I've mentioned previously, the main incentive for them is to actually reduce the value of the claim, and insurance companies also traditionally like to settle claims as quickly as they can to get them off their books. So at the start of the claim, they will normally set a reserve as to how much money they've set aside to pay for that particular claim in respect to the client's compensation and also in respect to the lawyer's legal fees. And traditionally they do like to settle as many of these claims as possible. So they're keen for the client to make a full recovery. It's in their interest for the client to do that.
Okay, Daniel, thank you. And after that letter of claim has been submitted, what then happens?
So insurance company ordinarily have 3 months to investigate the accident and decide whether or not to admit liability. Often they would ask for an extension of time for reasons because they haven't received all of the evidence yet for them to make an informed decision as to whether or not the accident was their fault or not. And there's a general assumption by the courts that the parties will try and act reasonably with each other and cooperate with each other as well. So if the insurance company's got a good reason as to why they can't provide a liability decision, so for example they're still waiting for evidence, then they would expect the claimant lawyer to grant that request for an extension of time.
And are there any other steps that you take at the start of the case?
Yes, so the important thing for listeners to know is that the burden of proof is on the claimant to actually prove the claim. Therefore, the evidence gathering process will start immediately as soon as we're formally instructed to deal with the claim. So that would often involve not only obtaining their medical records of the claimant, but also any other evidence. So that might be, for instance, CCTV footage, it may be witness statements, and it's really important in a personal injury claim that you interview the witness. You're always the first party to interview that witness, because in law there's no property in a witness. In other words, any party could actually interview a witness if they wanted to. So you want to be the first in there to actually obtain a statement from them, which hopefully will help prove your claim.
Thank you, Daniel. And many people listening to this might be wondering about court and having to go to court and be averse about the whole process. It might scare them a little bit. In your experience in personal injury cases like this, will the client generally be required to go to court?
No, it's extremely unlikely that the client would have to go to a final trial. Sometimes it's necessary to actually commence court proceedings within the limitation time limit that Denise mentioned earlier, but to actually go to a court trial is extremely rare.
Thank you. So we're nearing the end of our conversation with Daniel Denton and Denise Doherty from Hodge Jones and Allen Solicitors. We've been speaking about the new personal injury law clinic initiative that we've been putting together with HJA as well as Bloomsbury Institute. Now, in closing, Daniel and Denise, question for you both. Daniel, let's start with you. What advice would you give to anybody who is thinking about making a personal injury claim?
Yes, so the strongest piece of advice that I have for all of our viewers is that it's really important to seek legal advice as quickly as possible. And the reason for this is firstly because what you find is people's memories fade as time goes by, and you start the evidence gathering straight away. So it's really important to notify the insurance company straight away of the claim, put them on notice, and then if for some reason later on, for example, some of the evidence is not possible to obtain, so for example, supposing CCTV evidence is deleted, what we would do is we would invite the court to draw what's called an adverse inference in their failure to provide the CCTV evidence.
Thanks for that. And Denise, if someone's listening to this and perhaps they're on the fence about making a personal injury claim, what would you say to them?
Yeah, again, I would say definitely get in touch sooner rather than later. We can help to aid with any queries that you have if you are unsure that you have a claim. So definitely get in touch sooner rather than later. And as Dan had said, it really helps with the evidence gathering process, especially when you get in quite soon after the accident in terms of gathering witness evidence, CCTV footage. The whole process is made a lot more easier when you're dealing with claims that have happened a few months ago, rather than something that's happened 2 years ago, where you're trying to get people to remember how accidents specifically happened. So yeah, just get in touch would be my advice.
Thanks. So the personal injury team will be around for future episodes. This is our first conversation with them, providing an overview of the personal injury claims process as well as what the law clinic is, how it was set up, etc. So in future episodes you can expect to hear not just from the personal injury law team at Hodge Jones Solicitors, but also from the family team, from the wills and probate team. But as far as future personal injury law episodes go, Daniel, could you give us a bit of a preview about some of the shows to come in the weeks ahead?
Yes, so we're going to do a show that concentrates purely on road traffic collision cases and how we process those. And we're also going to do other specialist shows based on accidents in the workplace, accidents in a public place, and also accidents that have occurred on a highway.
Great. So Denise, if I've got my phone, my laptop, my desktop out right now, how can I learn more about the Bloomsbury Institute Law Clinic?
Yeah, so if you'd like to learn more about the Bloomsbury Institute Law Clinic, just visit the website and look up Bloomsbury Law Clinic. Then, as Daniel mentioned earlier as well, there's also the phone number, which is 033 0029 446, or the email address, which is bilradio@hja.net.
And so, yes, if you do visit the Bloomsbury Institute Law Clinic webpage, you'll also see, as Daniel mentioned, a very specific inquiry form. It says inquire with us now. And as for learning a bit more about both of you, how can we find out more online? Daniel, you first.
Yes, please visit the Hodge Jones Allen website, which is www.hja.net, and please feel free to look up both our profiles. So just to remind you, my name's Daniel Denton and my colleague's name is Denise Doherty.
So Daniel and Denise, thank you so much for making time today. Any closing remarks as we leave our listeners?
No, I'd just like to emphasise, if you do have an inquiry and you're really not sure what to do, please do just complete the inquiry form, or phone Bloomsbury Law Clinic, or email them on the email address provided, the bilradio@hja.net, and we would be delighted to help if you possibly can. We're here to help everyone.
And Denise?
Yeah, exactly what Daniel says. We'd be delighted to help anyone who's unsure whether they have a claim or whether they do have a claim. We would be delighted to hear from you.
Well, thanks both, and to our listeners, goodbye for now, and we look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of The Letter of the Law. Thank you very much.
Anyone can lose it all. Well, anyone can lose